And now to the conflict in Sudan. The UN Humanitarian Office is warning that the nearly year-long conflict between Sudan's military and paramilitary forces has put the African nation on course to become the world's worst hunger crisis, with malnutrition soaring. Edem Wasonu, the director of humanitarian operations, was speaking to the UN Security Council that already 1/3 of Sudan's population face acute food insecurity and catastrophic hunger levels could be reached in some areas of the western Darfur region by the time the lean season arrives in May, according to the Deputy Director General of Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN, Mauricio Martina. A peaceful and negotiated political solution and immediate cessation of hostilities is an essential step in eliminating the risks of famine in Sudan.
A humanitarian travesty is playing out in Sudan under a veil of international inaction and inattention. Simply put, we are failing the people of Sudan. By all measures, the sheer scale of humanitarian needs, the numbers of people displaced and facing hunger, Sudan is one of the worst humanitarian disasters in recent memory. More than 1/3 of the country's estimated population are facing food insecurity. By the time the lean season arrives in May, people in some parts of Darfur could face what we term IPC Phase 5 level acute food insecurity. We call this stage a catastrophe.
A peaceful and political solution and immediate cessation of hostility to facilitate the delivery of urgent humanitarian assistance is an essential step in eliminating the risk of famine. I join my colleagues in calling all the parties to respect their obligation under international humanitarian and human rights law. Safe and sustained humanitarian access must urgently to be restored to all in need of life-saving assistance.
There is a real and growing risk that the violence in Sudan will soon create the world's largest hunger crisis. But our emergency relief operation is being severely hampered by a lack of access and a lack of resources. Currently, 90% of the people in IPC Phase 4 who urgently need life-saving food assistance are trapped in areas that are largely inaccessible to humanitarian agencies. These include conflict hotspots such as Khartoum, Gezira State, the Kordofans, and the Darfur states. Our efforts to reach these civilians are challenged by the relentless violence and by interference from the warring parties. And bureaucratic obstacles are further shrinking the space for humanitarians to operate.
And away from the continent, a U.S. federal appeals court has blocked Texas' controversial immigration law hours after the Supreme Court allowed the state to begin enforcing the measure. The law, known as Texas Senate Bill 4, SB4 for short, was signed into law by Republican Governor Greg Abbott in December and makes it a crime for foreigners to enter Texas from anywhere other than a legal port of entry. The legislation would let police in Texas arrest and prosecute anyone they think has entered the country illegally, but challengers say the measure usurps a federal authority. Well, the Court of Appeals panel appeared split on the constitutionality of the law and whether it interferes with federal powers, as U.S. President Joe Biden's administration has argued. They issued no immediate ruling, and it is unclear when they will do so. All right, let's cross over live to Texas, where political analyst Somto Ikejofor joins us live on the program. So, Somto, I mean, so great to see you again, and so much
great to see you too, Kelly.
Absolutely, and so much to dissect as regarding this very controversial bill. But for our viewers who are watching and do not understand, what does the Texas immigration bill, or SB4, really means?
Okay, so thank you so much for having me. SB4 was passed during the legislative session. The governor of Texas is trying to solve the problem of immigration. There are millions of people trying to cross the border post the 2020-2021 year. So he is trying his absolute best to protect the people in the border states and in the border cities. And in doing that, he passed SB4, which was, of course, championed by Dan Patrick and the entire Texas Legislative Caucus, and it was signed into law by the governor himself, Greg Abbott. So that law specifically allows Texas law enforcement to arrest people who they deem cross the border illegally. So that's where the problem lies, right? You have a lot of immigration groups worried about that. There is fear of people being targeted. There's also fear of people being stopped and, just stopped and asked about their immigration status. But that's something that people shouldn't worry about. I was in a PIP meeting yesterday with some community leaders, and I spoke to them about the concerns of the Nigerian community, particularly here in the Harris County area, because there are a lot of Nigerian Americans here in the Harris County region. And the chief of police and his deputy chief of police did assure me that that's not something within their spectrum. That's not something that they have the breadth for. That's not something that they would stop people and just ask them that question. What is your immigration status? Where are you? But like you mentioned, last night, on Tuesday night, it was paused by the Federal Court of Appeal, right? So now we're in this limbo side and this waiting period of what to see what will happen with the law. But yes, it has been passed by the governor. Yes, it was supposed to go into effect. But on Tuesday, one of the justices in the Federal Court of Appeals put the pause on it.
And so, I mean, I'm just wondering, why is the SB4 so controversial?
It is controversial because of the humanitarian aspect of it, right? So there is also the racialized aspect of it, right? There is this issue of with the bad language being used to describe immigrants, being the poison of the nation, being the bad blood of the nation, talking about how they are quote unquote rapists and criminals. That is not true. Immigrants do have a huge value to the United States. Nigerians in particular, particularly in the Texas area, we run this town, right? We go from being business owners, lawyers, doctors, and pharmacists to various spectrums of life, right? So that's something that's why it's so controversial, because of the racialized connotation to it, and because a certain group of people are going to be marginalized. That's why it is controversial. Of course, we believe in, as a society, we believe in making sure that the human is who we look to, right? The human is who we feel bad for. The Bible says, give me your sick, give me your hungry. So some people do see the immigration crisis as an issue, right? They're open to welcoming others, but some do see it as someone coming to take over their land, someone coming to take over their property. So there is that racialized undertones of it, and that's why it is so controversial.
All right. I mean, the U.S. Justice Department says the law would have significant and immediate adverse effects on the relations between Mexico and, of course, the U.S. I mean, the U.S. Justice Department went as far as saying that will create chaos and confusion. What do you say? Yes.
Okay, now we're going into international waters, right? In the Northern American side, you have Mexico, Canada, and the United States. They call themselves the trios, the three amigos, right? So yes, it would come some issues because they would have to deport them to Mexico, right? And then the president will have to worry about that. He would have to accumulate and assimilate that huge population coming into his country. So there will be breathing room for crime, there will be breathing room for trafficking, there will also be breathing room for coyotes, to smuggle people in, to smuggle things in. So that's why it would cause an international crisis, in quote, because it's Mexico. Mexico is literally just 9 hours away from me. I can get in my car and get to the border in like 9 hours. So is it really an international issue? Not exactly, but in terms of the traditional definition of it, yes, it would be. But it's Mexico. The conversation can be had through a phone call with the president. It can also, a conversation can also be had through a phone call with Trudeau at the northern border. So it's not really, I don't see it as such a bad problem. I see it as a good problem. Yeah.
Allow me to squeeze in a question or two before we let you go, Somto. Yes, I'm wondering, please, for the governor of Texas, Governor Greg Abbott, what other options does he have? What other options can he explore?
So I use full disclosure, Kelly. I used to work for the governor of Texas, and I see the way he has put this bill forward, the way he advocated for the bill. He saw it as his only option. He saw it as his last resort, right? I don't think he sees it as any other option, because during the time at the Rio Grande, where he had put the buoys, people had died trying to cross the waters to come into Texas. So that had to be removed, right? And now he sees the bill as his last resort. So technically, in his going back to my time working for him, in the fact that he signed the bill, the fact that he advocates for the bill, and the fact that he has his Republican colleagues pushing for the bill, that tells me that that's the last resort that he has. He does not have any other option that he sees other than trying to shut down the border and trying to close the gap as much as he can. But of course, being the fact that this is a humanitarian crisis, there are other solutions, right? Like you mentioned, the diplomatic approach, as well as the controlling of the region, as well as the stability of the region, which the Madam VP, Vice President Kamala Harris, has gone through the Americas. She has gone to several Latin American countries to understand the underlying cause of the issues, right? So political stability is also another solution. There are solutions to the problem, but in the mind of Greg Abbott, there is no other solution than SB4. Absolutely.
One final question, Somto, I promise you. The Texas governor has recently upped his national profile amid speculation that he's angling to be Mr. Trump's running mate, or perhaps his attorney general if he wins in November, of course. That tells me there's perhaps a bipartisan or political undertone to all of this tussle.
Yes, Kelly, please. Thank you so much for asking me that question. There is a political undertone to it, of course. But yes, we all secretly know that Greg has DC ambitions. Everyone that is governor in Texas does have that ambition to go to DC. But yes, there is rumors about that. But the intelligence that I'm gathering, the intelligence and the readout hasn't shown he was interviewed and he had been checked for that particular role yet. So I haven't seen the upper research on his candidacy. I'm not sure that that's something that he would like to. I don't see that happening quite right now. But based on intelligence that I'm getting, I haven't heard anything strong that is strong to that. I've not heard anything strong enough to solidify that argument or that allegation. So right now, it's all purely rumors. But yes, some of the things he does, some of the busing of immigrants to various blue states, as he likes to call them. Yes, some consider that as trafficking, some consider that as heinous and political games. But yes, there is political undertones to it. He might be considered for the Attorney General because, let's be honest, he is a good lawyer. He has been Attorney General of the state of Texas before he became governor. So yes, he does have a track of having a very strong legal career here in the state of Texas. So yes, that's possible. Right. Attorney General is possible, but VP, I highly doubt it.
Well, we will wait and see the build-up and the race to the White House. It's intensifying as the days come by. November is only just a few months away. But more importantly, civil society groups are warning that this particular controversial law could separate families and lead to racial profiling across the states. And for me, that's my greatest concern. But it's a fine place to anchor a conversation with you, Somto Ike-Ejiofor, live for us from Texas. Thank you, and great to see you again.
Yeah, it's good to see you too, Kelly. Bye. Bye to your viewers.
Well, you're watching The World Today. We are due for another break, but when we come back, lost but found and given a new home as Chinese woman racks up huge debts caring for more than 2,000 stray dogs and 80 cats. Please stay with us. Welcome back. At least 21 people have been killed and several others injured in a suicide bombing in the southern Afghan city of Kandahar. According to the Taliban, the suicide attack took place at a bank located in the city center No group has yet said it carried out the attack, which appears to be the biggest in the Afghanistan this year. The blast took place at a branch where Afghan government employees were queuing to collect their salaries. A doctor from the regional hospital said those killed and about 50 injured people have been taken to a hospital, while the overall security situation in Afghanistan has improved since the Taliban gained complete control with the full withdrawal of foreign troops in 2021. There continue to be dozens of bombings and suicide attacks in the country each year. Let's take you now to Indonesia, where the country's defense minister, Prabowo Subianto, has been declared the winner of the last month's presidential election in the world's third largest democracy. 80% of 205 million people, registered voters across 17,000 islands and 3 time zones, trooped to polling centers on February 14th, making it the world's largest single-day election. The 72-year-old former general, who has been dogged by allegations of human rights abuse for decades now, won 58.59% of the vote. Mr. Prabowo is appealing for unity as his 2 rivals, Anies Baswedan and Ganjar Pranowo, vow to contest the result. He will assume office in October, taking over from President Joko Widodo, who is popularly known as Jokowi. And India will prosecute 35 Somali pirates that were arrested during an operation to free a hijacked vessel off Somalia on Saturday. Naval officials say the men are due to arrive in India this weekend, where they will be handed over to law enforcement agency. Last week, the Indian Navy managed to seize the Malta-flagged commercial ship MV Ruan, which had been commanded by pirates in the northern Arabian Sea on December 14th. The event was the first hijacking of a commercial ship by Somali pirates since 2017. At the peak of the activity in 2011, Somali pirate activity cost the global economy an estimated $7 billion. In Kenya, doctors have stopped providing emergency services at public hospitals as they escalate a national strike that has entered its second week. Thousands of doctors have stayed away from hospitals since last Thursday over poor pay and working conditions, despite a court order calling for talks between the doctors and the health ministry. Officials from the Kenya Medical Practitioners, Pharmacists and Dentists Union say the doctors escalated the strike and stopped providing bare minimum services because the government had shown no efforts to resolve the labor dispute. The striking doctors accused the government of failing to implement a raft of promises, including a collective bargaining agreement signed in 2017 after a 100-day strike that saw people die from lack of care. And finally, on the program, over 2,000 stray dogs and cats now have a new home to lay their heads. It's all thanks to an animal lover from the China city of Jinan who's making her house available, a home to 2,400 dogs and 80 cats. Dong Shuzheng, founder of the shelter, has officially been collecting strays for 11 years now. She began caring for the stray animals in 2013. Since then, she has moved 4 times, admitting the job put her into debt amounting to 600 yuan, equivalent to $80,000. Well, she notes that she has been able to maintain the shelter this far as a result of donations and help of kind people from different industries. Volunteers also offer a lending hand, while restaurants donate leftover food for the animals. According to the 2021 China Pet Industry White Paper, the number of stray dogs in the country is estimated at about 40 million, while stray cats stands at 53 million. And that does it for us here on The World Today. Thanks indeed for watching. On behalf of the team and everyone here, I'm Kelly Egiga. Bye now.